Hello and thanks for being here. My name is Jeanine Scheffert and I am the Education and Engagement Manager here at Seed Savers Exchange. In this presentation, I'm going to touch on a few reasons to save seeds. By way of personal introduction, I'm going to tell you a very short version of my own seed story. So this is me. I grew up in rural Iowa at the end of a dead-end gravel road, and my family gardened. We grew a lot of our own food, and I loved to help. I think in my youngest years, my help may not have always been that helpful, so my mom told me that these chives were mine. I could eat chives or pick chives or hang out with the chives whenever I wanted to. In fact, I have a clump of chives in my yard now that came from my mom. This sense of connection to a plant or a seed is something I'll talk about a little bit later in this presentation as a reason to save seeds. But maybe the first question to ask is, what does it mean to save seeds? At the most basic, tangible level, seed saving can mean planting seeds, letting them grow into plants, harvesting seeds from those plants, and then saving those seeds to plant the next year. Some people make a differentiation between the phrases seed saving and seed keeping, with seed saving mean this simple act of taking the seeds from the parent plant and having them to plant the next year. And seed keeping then could include caring for them, knowing these seeds as friends or relatives, keeping their story, making their story a part of your story and you a part of theirs. In this presentation, I will use those two phrases, seed saving and seed keeping, somewhat interchangeably, and my definition for this presentation includes any and all of the above. And whichever phrase, definition, and practice you're most drawn to, I hope that this presentation will give you a few reasons that resonate with you and inspire you to dive deeper into the idea and practice of seed saving and seed keeping. So, why save seeds? There may be as many reasons to save seeds as there are people who save seeds. Let's hear from a few longtime seed savers and seed keepers about their reasons to save and keep seed.
Preservation strikes a chord with me, that things are being lost, and once they're gone, you can't reproduce something once it's gone. You might try, you might get close, but you can't make up for, let's say, 100 years of a family having this particular bean or this particular tomato. You can't make up for all the accidental things that came in that to create that.
It's being a part of preserving and transmitting to future generations the plant treasures that our ancestors have worked with and enjoyed, and in turn shared with the rest of us.
If you don't save seeds, how are you going to grow them next year?
Oh, because it feels so special to remember where I got that first seed and from whom and whatever its story was, and then to know that I'm keeping that story alive. Mm-hmm.
So why does Seed Savers Exchange save seeds? Our mission is to steward and share seeds for future generations, to educate, connect, and share seeds and stories. There are a number of really important reasons we do this, and one of those reasons may be best told in Seed Savers Exchange's founding story. Our founding story starts with co-founder Diane Ott-Whaley when she was a little girl. She would go visit her grandparents' farm, and she had this favorite spot where her grandfather grew these purple morning glories. And she'd hang out there on the porch with these morning glories. And every fall, when it was time to go back to school, she would help her grandfather collect the morning glory seeds. When Diane grew up, she was going to get married and move away, and she thought it would be really nice to have some of these morning glory seeds for her new home. So she asked her grandfather for some of these seeds, and he came out with a little pillbox full of morning glory seeds and also a handful of German pink tomato seeds. And when he gave them to her, he told her that these seeds had actually come from Bavaria with his parents when they emigrated in the 1880s. Now, Diane had known that her grandparents saved seeds out of necessity growing up in the Depression era, but this was the first time that she knew about this generational family connection to these seeds. And she suddenly felt connected not only to generations of her family, but also to cousins that maybe are still growing these same German pink tomato seeds, cousins that she'd never even met in Europe. Now, sadly, shortly after this gift was given, Diane's grandpa became ill and passed away. And it was at this moment that she suddenly felt a really heavy responsibility for these seeds. And she started to worry, what if I'm the only person who is saving these seeds? And what if something happens to me or to my garden? And these seeds that have been so important to my family for so long could vanish and become extinct. So she wrote a letter and she sent it out to some Back to the Land magazines like Mother Earth News and Landward Ho. And in this letter, she outlined her plan to share seeds with the idea that if I'm growing something in my garden and you're also growing it in your garden and this other person is growing it in theirs, then even if something happens to me or my garden, these seeds could still survive into the future because they would exist in your garden or in this other person's. And likewise, I could grow something important to you or your family to help those seeds be safe in the future. That first year, they heard back from 29 gardeners, and each gardener sent back a handwritten list of seeds they had to offer and a quarter. And Diane typed up a 6-page publication, stapled it together, and sent it back out to those first 29 seed listers. That was in 1975. By 1976, the number of participants had grown to 142, and it continued to grow from there. Here is the cover image of our current publication, and this is now over an inch thick, and it features thousands of seed listings, and we have an online version as well. This success story of sharing heirloom seeds illustrates a number of really important reasons that one might save seeds. It can create community through the act of saving and sharing seeds. You can save money if you don't have to buy seeds. It promotes self-sufficiency and independence from a reliance on seed companies. And we'll touch on that one a little bit more later. And the big reason this particular exchange project started in the first place, a connection to family heritage. This slide highlights another story of family heritage. This is the Ausilio family. They donated amazing pepper to Seed Savers Exchange a few years ago that had been in their family since the 1920s. If you're lucky enough to be in a family or a community that has passed seeds on from generation to generation, keep that going. And if you can't keep it going yourself, find someone who can. And as you get further into seed saving, if you find yourself in a position to be that someone who can take another person's seed legacy, that is a huge gift and a huge reason to save and keep seeds. Of course, not everyone has a family story of seed saving, but more and more people are connecting to their cultural heritage through seeds. This fish pepper is an example of a food that has been popular in a specific region of the world, in this case, the Mid-Atlantic, where it has been used to flavor fish soups and stews. Finding foods and seeds that connect you to a culture you are a part of can be a really powerful reason to save seed. And more people are learning about themselves and their own cultural heritage and making that connection through food and through seeds. I'm going to take a moment to talk about a couple of specific projects that focus on reconnecting to family and cultural heritage. First of all, I believe any discussion of seeds and their histories is also a discussion of humans and our histories. And if you know your US history, you probably know that this country's history includes intentional atrocities committed against Indigenous communities by the US government. One of those atrocities included systematically removing Indigenous people from their food systems, burning down cornfields, and removing people from their land, and forcing Indigenous people to assimilate to American culture. There are stories of kidnapping children and bringing them to boarding schools where they were forced to cut their hair, their language was forbidden, and they were fed food based on white flour, sugar, and dairy. They were intentionally removed from their food system as a means of control. So there have been generations of Indigenous people disconnected from seeds who were originally part of their family and community. The Indigenous Seed Keepers Network, or ISKN, is working to bring Indigenous communities back in touch with the seeds that they lost, and communities are able to reconnect to a cultural heritage that was stolen from them. The photo on the left is courtesy of Rowan White, an Indigenous seed keeper, activist, and former chair of Seed Savers Exchange Board. This photo is a moment of when these squash were returned to the Taos Pueblo tribe after years of forced separation. Reconnecting to lost and stolen seed ancestors is a powerful reason to save and keep seed. On the right is a photo from the Collard Project. The Collard Project is a project all about celebrating Collard seed stories and seed-saving traditions. This project aims to build a coalition of seed stewards, gardeners, farmers, chefs, and seed companies working to preserve heirloom collard varieties and their culinary heritage. The story of collards is part of the story of enslavement and atrocities against enslaved people. Enslaved people had a long history of forced contributions to the American food system, while simultaneously being systematically removed from their own food cultures. Collards themselves originated in Eurasia and were brought to Africa by Portuguese settlers. The first Africans stolen from their homes and brought on slave ships to the Americas actually brought seeds with them, including collard seeds. Collards are a highly nutritious leafy green vegetable that enslaved people adopted in place of the dark leafy greens from their homeland. In that way, collards became an important food of the African diaspora, and it filled a nutritional gap that enslaved people's diets. Today, more and more people are intentionally reconnecting to collards to celebrate the importance of this food in African and African American history and culinary traditions. Collards are just one of the many possible examples of important culinary traditions that a person can connect to. More and more people are finding ways to reconnect to lost family heritage and stolen or separated cultural heritage. Saving and keeping seeds can be a really powerful way to reclaim that family and cultural connection. In the mid-1970s, there was a movement of people who were starting to become aware of the dangers of losing genetic diversity in our food crops. With the introduction of commercial farming, many varieties that were once common were being replaced by hybrid varieties that were thought to perform better, and longtime favorites and family heirlooms were dropping out of popularity. One great reason to save seeds is to combat this loss of diversity and contribute to a stronger food system. You may have seen this graphic before. It aims to show the number of varieties of a few specific crop types, specifically the number of varieties commercially available in 1903 versus 1983. I want to point out a couple of really important things about this graphic. First of all, this is showing what is commercially available and then what is available at the USDA Seed Bank. This does not account for all of the seed stewards by communities and home gardeners. Also note that 80 years later refers to 1983, which was a long time ago. Since 1983, the heirloom seed saving movement has grown, with many small heirloom seed companies starting in that time. We're actually doing some research now to see what this chart might look like if we created it today, and I'm pretty excited to flip the script on this narrative. However, regardless of those results, I decided to share this graphic because it points to a really important fact that if we don't contribute and continue to save a diverse number of varieties, they won't continue to exist. So saving your own seed can contribute to a stronger seed and food system, and one that isn't dependent on the whims of the commercial seed trade. And speaking of the commercial seed trade, this graphic is also problematic for a couple of reasons. One, because it is already outdated, and the other is because it doesn't take into account small independent seed companies. What it does show, though, is that there has been a consolidation of the world's seed industry in a way that moves from small, independently owned seed companies towards larger chemical companies owning and making decisions about this system. So again, there are reasons this doesn't represent where we are as a society, because we can easily operate our own food system outside of this. But the way we do that is by asking the question, where are your seeds coming from? Who do you want to be in charge of our food system? The closer you are to saving your own seeds, or knowing who has saved your seeds, the closer you are to having control of your food and seed system in your own hands. Of course, not all seed purchases stem from chemical companies. There are plenty of reputable seed sources, such as Seed Savers Exchange, and many local and regional seed producers. And getting your seeds from seed companies and organizations is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't save seeds from everything I grow, and I don't grow everything I eat. But even getting seeds from a reputable seed source, such as Seed Savers Exchange, has its limitations. And we saw firsthand what some of those limitations were in March of 2020. As everyone now knows, in March of 2020, we were suddenly facing a worldwide pandemic, and people didn't know what was coming. One of the immediate instincts people had was to turn to growing their own food. And this chart shows the seed orders we received versus the seed orders we shipped out. You can see that up until early March, that red and blue line matched each other pretty well, which is what they should do. And then there was a moment where the whole world panicked. And you can see here we went from high sales of about 3,000 orders a week to well over 7,500 orders in a week. And at that same moment, we had to reevaluate our shipping system to make sure staff was safe. We spread people out and ordered masks, etc. And this is just representing one small piece of getting seeds to you. There's an entire supply chain that blew wide open and exposed just how many systems we rely on working in order to get seeds to home gardeners. As I was going over this presentation, I started thinking about the list of things that we as a society were assuming would work up until the point that things stopped working. And I made a quick list of what a person needs in order to get seeds from your own garden versus what you need to get seeds from a commercial seed company. Now, I don't mean to make light of that list. Not everyone has access to these things. But when you look at that left side there and compare it to everything I came up with and 30 seconds of wild typing on the other side, you can see that everything on one side is also on the other. And it's worth stopping to think about the supply chain and what could go wrong and what you're counting on to get those seeds to you. If you really need good Mother Stallard beans to plant and eat next year, save the seeds of good Mother Stallard beans. That's my favorite bean, and the only reason I have those beans planted this year is because I saved those seeds myself. Seed Savers ran out of our supply, and it will be replenished, but maybe not for a couple of years. So this slide isn't intended to worry anyone. Most of those things have long-term workarounds, but as far as immediate seed needs, if any of these things go wrong, it slows down the whole system. If the postal system stops working, who will deliver seeds to your door? If we can't get cardboard ordered, what do we use to send seeds out? It isn't that there are no answers to this, it's that figuring out new answers and new systems takes time and is less predictable. But if you have seeds in your backyard garden, or if your neighbor is growing seeds and will share or trade with you, then you're that much closer to your seeds and much more likely to know you will have the seeds you need to plant and grow for next year. Being connected to where your food comes from is an important step towards food security and is related to food sovereignty and social and environmental justice. And one of the ways you can most closely connect to where your food comes from is to know your seed and know where your seed comes from. And you will only get more and more connected as this seed becomes a family, community, or personal tradition. Which moves me to my last point. You can start your own tradition. You don't have to necessarily be connected to a personal family or cultural history. This can also be your own story. Take control of your own food system. Work within your community if you have one to work with. Talk to your neighbors if you're in a position to talk to your neighbors. If you grow a watermelon for the next 10 years, not only will you have watermelon to grow and enjoy every year, the melon you are growing in your garden will become more and more adapted to your environment. In fact, if I was growing the same variety in my garden for the next 10 years and then shared seeds with you, you might see a difference in the watermelon you grew with the seeds you had saved over 10 years compared to the seeds I've saved over 10 years, because the ones you've been saving have been adapting to your growing region and even your specific space. Plants and humans have co-evolved throughout time. We rely on one another and we become a part of one another's stories. Growing seeds can create community connections, family connection, and connect you to your cultural heritage, whether that is something you've celebrated all your life or something you are ready to reconnect to or connect to for the first time. So, where do you start? You start where you are. That's where we all start from. Ask yourself, what foods or flowers make you the most happy? What couldn't you do without? What are you excited to try? What do you have the space for? What are your friends and neighbors saving seed from? Could you divide things out and trade with one another? There are many resources to learn about seed saving and to access seeds in order to start your own seed saving and seed keeping journey. Whether it is monetary, soulful, connecting to past generations, to yourself, or simply out of love for a plant or food, start with something. Grow it, save it, love it, keep it, plant it again. Start your seed saving journey.